Ladies and gentlemen, your YouTube pal, Jason for Realist News. I am hoping that what I'm about to read to you and discuss with you right now, and you better hope so, is nothing more than another invalid, nonsensical attempt to stop Trump, which will end in a miserable failure, and Trump will get the certification, so to speak, of the Electoral College in his favor today. As you're watching this video, again, I do these videos the night before, which is the 5th of January. So tomorrow morning, first thing, 8 a.m. Eastern, you will be seeing this video, and then we wait. And I looked back at some C-SPAN footage from 2009 where the Democrat, or the House and then Senate, voted to, I guess, certify the electoral votes. And that happened, there's a little screenshot I saw, 10:30 or 10:33 a.m., and I believe that's Eastern time. Because I want to know, what time do they normally do this, if there is such a thing? I know it just has to be done sometime that day. So I can't wait to see. I cannot wait to see how this goes. Because something quite interesting, and certainly enough to get one House member and one Senate person to officially object to the Electoral College votes, which will then make them take a recess, have a little discussion, which can last no more than 2 hours, and decide, do we agree with the objection? And the objection, as I've said at least 6 or 7 times now, since November, since the election, I told you I've been very, very, very concerned about this. And only recently I was like, that feeling kind of lifted off my shoulders. Like I think we maybe actually be okay. That feeling of, wait a minute, there's something coming. It's not over yet. Don't settle down yet, because there's, that kind of went away. And I thought, well, this is the last roadblock. Although I did say, this is the one that concerns me the most, because you could just blame it on the House and Senate. You can't blame it on the left. You can't blame it on the right. You can't blame it on any person, but you can blame it on the Congress. And then they are going to blame it on what I'm about to read to you and saying, well, this is a legitimate thing here. We can't, this is a democracy. We have to, and you're going to say, well, gosh, can I argue with that? And actually the answer is yes. You can argue with it. So I just wrote myself a little note. I've actually sent myself, I send myself links every day. Do video on this, do video on this, do video on this. Usually 3 or 4. I have 8 links I've sent myself today. You need to do a video on this. I'm not sending 8 videos out today. I'm still doing 3, and I'll save the next ones for the weekend. But all of them have now been superseded by this video. I must start my 3 sets of videos today with this one. So as you know, I said January 6, 2017 would be a big day that Congress might try to object to the Electoral College votes. I gave Florida and Texas as an example to where, according to law, the Congress, again, through one House member, one Senate member, can object. Doesn't mean it happens. They didn't have to vote on it. But that's all it takes to object. And they can object to a single Electoral College voter or an entire state and nullify the whole state. In other words, object to the whole state because X, Y, Z. And in this instance, they found a way, or so they say, and you're going to read it in a second, to find 50 Trump electors null and void, illegitimately seated as Electoral College members, which means they don't count according to this. I saw this article on Salon.com. Quick look, surprised. I saw it on Huffington Post, and then I clicked the link and it said the page can't be displayed. But I went to the Google's cache and saw it and read it in full. It's the same story. I've seen it elsewhere. This just came up. Quick look, surprise. All I can tell you, and I'm sorry, I'm going to get to it in a second. This has been bothering me really bad all day long. All I can tell you is what I told you last time, that if he's not given the presidency, it's time to move to Omaha, Nebraska. Because at that point, there's a quote-unquote, as John Teeter said, a problem with the elections in which a civil war will stem from, ultimately. And at this point, this is going to be a problem with the elections. Because number one, if 50 of these people, Electoral College voters, are found null and void, and the House and Senate agree and they vote on it, yep, we agree, it takes Trump down below his 270 needed electoral votes, which then, as I've been reading, gives either them the choice of Hillary, Donald Trump, or Colin Powell, because some, one or two or whatever it was, of the Electoral College voted for Colin Powell. Remember that? Colin Powell, what the? So you could have another black man in the White House, which I'm thinking of for the prophecy of Baba Vanga about this last black man in the White House, 44th president, although this would be the 45th president who's black, so black and black. Not that matters right now. Just was what came into my mind as I was thinking about this earlier. So, where do I begin? And well, let me read you my comment to myself, because when I was thinking of it at the time, I re-emailed myself to send myself this comment because it's very relevant, and then I'm going to read this story in full. I said, keep in mind that no matter if the Republican electors should or should not have been able to vote. So in other words, whether this is null and void or it is not null and void, that it's legit, should not matter. Why? Because the people, us, already voted, and they voted for Trump on those or in those elector states. So whether the person who's supposed to cast our vote for us wasn't allowed to or was allowed to doesn't matter, because whoever would fill that spot would have voted for Trump anyways, because that's their duty. So that's, to me, this nonsense is null and void. We already spoke. That's who we voted for. Don't even try to tell us that all of a sudden they're null and void. Because again, even if they are, and new people were to replace them, they still have to vote the way the people said to vote. That's the way it always goes. So here's this. It came up from alternate.org originally, but again, all these mainstream liberal sites are running with this. At least 50 Trump electors were illegitimately seated as Electoral College members. More evidence surfaces as calls mount to challenge congressional ratification of Electoral College vote. More than 50 Electoral College members who voted for Donald Trump were ineligible to serve as presidential electors because they did not live in the congressional districts they represented or held elective office in states legally barring dual office holders. The stunning finding is among the conclusions in an extensive 1,000-page plus legal briefing prepared by and they're very key here. We must use the word bipartisan. We don't want them to think this is the left. By a bipartisan nationwide legal team for members of Congress who are being urged to object to certifying the 2016 Electoral College results on Friday, which is today, as you're watching my video. Quote, Trump's ascension to the presidency is completely illegitimate, said Ryan Clayton of Americans Take Action, who is promoting the effort. Quote, it's not just Russians hacking our democracy. It's not just voter suppression at unprecedented levels. It is also that there are Republicans illegally casting ballots in Electoral College, and in a sufficient number that the results of the Electoral College proceedings are illegitimate as well. End quote. Quote, Republicans like to talk all the time about people voting illegally, Clayton continued. We have a list of a bunch of Republicans that allegedly voted illegally in the Electoral College. Pam Bondi is the Attorney General of the state of Florida, and the Florida Constitution says that you cannot hold two offices. And she holds the office of Attorney General, and she holds the office of Federal Elector in the Electoral College. This is a violation of the law. That is a violation of the Constitution. And the vote that she cast in this election is illegal. End quote. A joint congressional session is scheduled to ratify the 2016 Electoral College vote this Friday. While there have been calls to challenge that certification, including a one-woman-led effort saying Trump's victory is due to voter suppression targeting people of color, the analysis that scores of Trump electors were illegally seated, and the additional finding that most states won by Trump improperly filed their Electoral College certificates of vote with Congress, is unprecedented. This research and report grew out of the legal activities surrounding the December 19th Electoral College meeting, where Clayton and others urged Republican electors to reject Trump, saying they had a constitutional responsibility to pick a more qualified president. So he's one of the ones that started the first nonsense, in which only two people flip-flopped on Trump? They're not done, and I told you they wouldn't be done. They're not done. They're going to try to get this from him. All we can hope for is that this becomes nonsense. It's nothing to worry about. It's a bunch of huff and puff, and that's it. But as I said before, Trump has come out vocally, visibly for the whole world to see and said, we're going to drain the swamp, which means all you Congress critters, you're part of that swamp. And the stuff you have now, the way you do things now, is not going to be the way we do things in the future. That's what he's telling them. He also told them, I'm going to push for term limits for all of you in Congress. These 20-year people, not no more. You're going to have one or two term limits. That's it. So you're telling these people sitting on and I said this a million times before, sitting on a gravy train with lobbyists flooding their back pockets with enormous amounts of cash for quote-unquote campaign contributions. Your gravy train ends when I become president, because you're not going to get stuff to be signed by me. I'm going to veto stuff that you really need me to pass, and I'm not going to pass it unless you put some pork in there like you're used to doing, except this pork is for your own demise, and that is term limits for all of you. So you're a congressman, and maybe you're a Republican. Republicans own the House and Senate, right? And I keep hearing the House and Senate that Jay Schnipp, there's no chance that this happened. The Republicans will back him. Have you all forgotten how many Republicans were against him? They practically did not support him at all. The RNC did not support him at all. Didn't raise any money for him, period. Like they did in previous times, every other previous time, when there was a Republican, for the Republican Party or whoever was running. So and again, they're going to come to a bipartisan agreement such as, guys, we don't want the swamp drained. Guys, we love this gravy train. We need to figure out something, and this is it. We just hit the bingo payday lottery ticket with this one. We can now find 50 electors null and void. So I'm extremely concerned about this. And I'm going to say all I can hope for is that this is a non-issue again. And that for some reason, all of the Republicans, because that's what it's going to take, the Democrats don't have enough to pass the law or pass this bill, whatever it ends up turning into, to nullify these electoral colleges. It has to be a vote through Congress and House and Senate. But they say, that's true, the Senate and Congress and the House is owned, so to speak, by the Republicans right now because they have the majority. But how many of those Republicans will flip-flop in a heartbeat? Just enough to give the Democrats their vote of, we find these null and void. It wouldn't take a whole lot. Would not take a whole lot at all. So that's why I'm extremely concerned. Finishing on, Clayton is hoping that sufficient numbers of Republicans in Congress will not vote to ratify the Electoral College votes, thus depriving Trump of the 270 Electoral College votes he needs to win the presidency. If that transpires, the House would then decide between the three top Electoral College vote getters, which is Trump, Hillary Clinton, and Colin Powell, he said. But before any of that can happen, there needs to be a formal challenge to ratifying the 2016 Electoral College results in Friday's joint session of Congress, which is where the research finding that scores of Trump voters were illegally cast comes in. I feel almost certain. I can't be 100% certain because you never know for sure, but I will say I feel almost 100% certain, as close as I possibly can get. Let's call it 99%. Somebody in the House is going to raise their hand and in writing, I dispute this Electoral College. And then a senator, I also dispute. And just an FYI, this only happened one other time in 2005, I think, from what I read today. And in 1876. Okay, something like 1876 and then 2005. And the 2005 one was only a minor little, like one or two electoral voters, kind of a thing, which didn't matter anyways, because even if they were found null and void, it didn't matter. It wasn't enough to change the election. So this is an extremely rare event if they do this tomorrow. Or, as I'm saying this now, today. You'll be seeing this today. Friday the 6th. But before any of that can happen, there needs to be a formal challenge to ratifying the 2016 Electoral College results in Friday's joint session of Congress, which is where the research finding that scores of Trump voters were illegally cast comes in. Quote, "We have reason to believe that there are at least 50 electoral votes that were not regularly given or not lawfully certified, 16 congressional district violations and 34 dual office holder violations." The executive summary of the electoral vote objection packet said, "The number could be over 100. We urge you to prepare written objections for January 6th. The compiling of the laws and evidence in this electoral vote objection package was completed by a national team of roughly 15 pro bono attorneys, law students, and legal assistants who represent no client or entity." The summary said, "We are nonpartisan, Democrat, Republican, and independent. We live in different parts of the country, urban and rural, red states and blue states," end quote. The Electoral College's results have only been challenged twice since 1877. The most recent was in 2005, when an objection to Ohio's Electoral College votes was filed by Representative Stephanie Tubbs Jones, Democrat, Ohio, and Senator Barbara Boxer, Democrat, California. While that effort did not stop President George W. Bush's re-election, it did force both chambers of Congress to debate for 2 hours before the Electoral College vote was ratified. Tubbs Jones and Boxer used the podium to rail against GOP efforts to suppress the vote and disqualify ballots in communities of color. The process for challenging the Electoral College vote is twofold. First, a House member has to file a formal challenge and objection. Then one House member and one senator have to sign on, prompting each body to retire to their chambers for the 2-hour debate. The Electoral Vote Objection Packet briefing cites two main areas where 2016 Electoral College members were illegally seated, and a third where their votes electing Trump were improperly sent to Congress. He says, specifically, at least 16 electors lived outside the congressional districts they represented in violation of state statutory residency requirements, and at least 34 electors held dual offices in direct violation of statutes prohibiting dual office holding. The briefing's executive summary says, noting this violates 2 sections of the U.S. Constitution. The first group of illegitimate electors amount to political carpetbagging. In North Carolina, for instance, the briefing says a state law states 1 presidential elector shall be nominated from each congressional district. Yet we have voter registration cards showing that numerous North Carolina electors lived outside the congressional districts they represented. The report lists the following states and their number of illegitimate electors. Arkansas, 2 from outside its congressional district. Indiana, 1. Louisiana, 1. Michigan, 1. North Carolina, 7. Oklahoma, 1. Texas, 3. The second group of illegitimate electors is based on the fact that presidential electors hold a federal office, however short-lived, and that directly conflicts with states that ban elected officials from holding more than one office at a time. Florida's state constitution, for example, bars dual office holding. Its Supreme Court has issued rulings that further define what constitutes an office holder, and the state legislature has passed other laws treating them as public officials, such as reimbursing them for travel costs. So, if you do anything for the state and you have to get reimbursed travel costs, automatically, apparently, you're a public official, so you can't hold office. Wow. Two offices. Ironically, Florida Attorney General Pam Bondi, who has issued a number of advisory legal opinions on dual office holding, was a presidential elector, the briefing said. Her name was on the governor's certification list of Republican electors, and also Attorney General Bondi cast her electoral ballot on December 19th. Joe Negron, who also cast an electoral vote, is currently president of the Florida Senate. The report lists the following states and their number of illegitimate electors based on dual office holders. And by the way, you know how I always use Florida and Texas in my example, where they would try to just take those two states away and they should have enough to, cause Trump some problems. The states now that have, allegedly dual office holders: Alabama, Florida, Georgia, Iowa, Kansas, Kentucky, Michigan, Missouri, Nebraska, North Carolina, Ohio, Oklahoma, Pennsylvania, South Carolina, South Dakota, Tennessee, Texas, Utah, and West Virginia. Some of them have more than one. This tally, which adds up to 49 electors, was taken from a spreadsheet accompanying the briefing and is a larger number than was cited in the report's executive summary, which is quoted above. Finally, there is another area of concern. Apparently, 23 states out of the 31 that cast electoral college votes for Trump did not properly report separate vote counts for president and vice president to Congress. That violates the 12th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution and a federal law requiring presidential electors in each state to provide two distinct lists of votes, one for the president and other for vice president, the briefing said. Of 31 states, only 8 states followed that law. The report said some states codify the federal law into their own state law regarding presidential electors. Of those, 15 states did not provide two lists of signatures on their certificates of vote. We are not providing any legal advice, the briefing's disclaimer says. We are strongly suggesting that members of Congress employ their own legal teams to verify our work. It may be that the efforts to convince Congress to challenge the ratification of the 2016 Electoral College amounts to little more than a Hail Mary aimed at derailing a Trump presidency. As of late Wednesday, Clayton thought there would be House members willing to object to certifying the Electoral College vote, but he was less certain about finding a senator willing to go along. But even if a challenge is mounted and fails, it underscores the illegitimate basis of Trump's presidency and the deep opposition to it, and refutes the GOP's outrageous claim that it has a mandate for dismantling government programs across the board. Quote, "We have a list of 50 illegal electors," Clayton said. "That puts Donald Trump below the threshold that he needs to be elected president. Let's debate it in an open session. According to the Constitution, the Congress, if nobody wins on this first round of balloting, picks from the top 3 candidates. That will be Hillary Clinton, Donald Trump, and Colin Powell." You don't think there's a single Democrat in the House and a single Democrat in the Senate that's willing to raise their hand and object and file it in writing or whatever they have to do? I think there isn't a heartbeat. Matter of fact, I could send you a Republican by the name of John McCain that would gladly do it, much less a Democrat. And not that this is good news, but if there's any good news, we don't have to wait at all. Today is going to be the day where we find out. And I will tell you, as I said, I hope, if there's anything I've ever hoped for in my life, it is that this goes through like every other time. Clear sailing, no issues. And if there's an issue, it's nothing. It doesn't change anything. Donald Trump's the next president. He walks in the White House January 20th, 21st. He's there. He's the man. Let's make America great again. We're repealing Obamacare, which they're already starting to do right now as we speak. Next thing, just bang, 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 all the way out, just handling business. That's really, 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 really what I want. But the arguments in this, if true, and I don't have any way of really knowing right now if their arguments are true or not, actually doesn't matter. Even if their arguments are based on complete lies, it only takes a nonsensical Congress and Senate to believe it and say it's enough for us to be of cause us concern. We will not ratify this. We're gonna not count these 50 people. Therefore, your 270 needed electoral votes go away. And while you still have the most, doesn't matter. We're now going to pick. And as I'm seeing this today, all I was thinking of, John Teeter, there's a problem with the elections in which a civil war stems from. And the president at that time, he/she would be more concerned about keeping the status quo going more than anything else that was happening in the country at the time. That's what he said. And even referred to that president as he/she. Yet the previous president he was talking about, he did not refer that way and just called them your president or leader was how he referred to that one. And that they drove a wedge further into the Bill of Rights, that particular one. NDAA, National Defense Authorization Act, massive executive orders, ring a bell, stripping away those freedoms left and right. But, and you could argue, well, George Bush sure as hell did that, Patriot Act and all that, and I would strongly agree with that. But that was then, and this is now. And we're about to find out just how this is going to go. I sure hope this is a non-issue, but I'd be lying if I told you I wasn't concerned. And if this happens, as this article suggests could happen, actually does, I'm going to Omaha, Nebraska. I don't know how soon it will be. It could be a few years, it could be a couple years, I don't know. But I will start making plans to go there. If Donald Trump is stripped of this, him being the president because of this nonsense, any nonsense to tell you the truth, if he's not walking in that White House the 20th or 21st, I'm going to do what John Teeter told his family allegedly to do on this world line, if you will. He told them to move to Omaha, Nebraska, start his own young self a garden in the backyard where they can grow their own food. That's what he told his mom to do. If the story's true, okay? First of all, if it's true. But you go and read that sucker right now, that story, and man, oh man, does a lot of this make sense. I'm going to end this video with one more little point. The club, the Congress, the power structure that's been in place for so long, which we will refer to as the military-industrial complex that does not want Trump in there, really wants war. And as you can see, they are going after Russia right now. The hackers, we're going to put some troops on the border over there. They are really pushing buttons. Bad. Trump, on the other hand, is saying, Putin, relax. I'll be in the White House in a number of days. We can start working together as two nations, and this nonsense will go away. That's essentially what he was saying. Not in those words. But if he doesn't make it into the White House, Russia's now the enemy for sure. The neocons, the liberals, the military-industrial complex will be taking us to war, and it makes total sense, like Teeter said, about China and Russia, and China forcefully unifies all the Asian nations before Nuclear Day, and the world goes into war. Very short and brief, but extremely brutal. Nuclear. And he seemed to think Omaha, Nebraska would be the best place for his family to go. And he even said that would be the future capital of the country. In the future. Omaha, Nebraska would be the new capital of the U.S. So my entire life, well, last 10 years, I should say, or more, of learning all this stuff, thinking about all this stuff, taking it all in, what's real, what's not real, is that a real time travel story, is kind of contingent. Everything is now contingent on this thing with Trump. If he does not make it as the president, I am now I will be 100% convinced, regardless of the time frame with dates and stuff in the John Teeter story, it was absolutely real. What he said was real, and it's now punching you in the face because there's definitely a problem with the elections that would cause a civil war. Again, if you take away the 50 people for technicalities or whatever, it doesn't matter. The people, the districts voted for him. They were just our person we put up to walk up there and write their name on this paper and hand it in. It doesn't change anything, but it'll give them the power to take it away from Trump, and they're going to use it. I'm very worried about this, as you can tell. So, both fingers crossed. Non-issue. Friday the 6th goes by. Even if there is a congressional hearing on this because someone raises their hand and doesn't like it, and it goes away, nope, he's still the man, I'll feel better. I still won't feel perfectly good until he walks into the White House on the 20th or 21st. Then I will have a huge sigh of relief and say, you know what? Maybe our society doesn't end that way, the way we were thinking it would. It was close, but it didn't happen, and that's all that matters. I'd love to say that. We will find out. I don't even know if I'm going to be able to sleep tonight. I'm kind of excited and scared at the same time. Take care.